Well, the winter rains have finally arrived a little bit early this year, which means it's going to be time for me to start pulling up what's left of my vegetable garden. Here's Kristopher with some great tips on how to prepare your garden for the winter so you'll have a good start next spring.
Hello friends, I'm Kristopher the Midwest Man Mountain. Welcome to my garden. There are 5 steps to my approach for taking out a garden and preparing the land for your garden next season. First, I go through and do a final harvest on anything that I'm going to be pulling out. Today I'll be getting out a few more peppers, a little bit of kale, and maybe some ground cherries. Second, I have to take out the fence that goes all the way around my garden. This will help me get easier access for bringing my wheelbarrow in and out. Then we go through and we pull all the greens. Now that's what takes pretty much the most time for the first half at least. I'm going to take those greens out, put them in a wheelbarrow, and then bring them to my compost, because mixing those greens from the garden and all the brown material from the leaves that are falling right now is what's going to give me perfect compost for next season. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to till all of the ground. So it's a hand tilling, not an automatic tilling, what I like to do. Spading, you could also call it. I'm going to dig a spade into the earth about 6 inches, pull it up, and just turn it over. This creates big clumps, and over the winter time, moisture seeps down deep into the earth and those clumps break apart. So I have nice fine soil to work with in the springtime. And then lastly, I'm going to blow leaves onto my garden. Yesterday, I mulched all the leaves that had fallen in my side yard, and I'm going to blow these on after I have spaded the garden. These are going to go into those cracks, and over the winter they'll break down into compost and add just a little bit of extra nutrient to the soil for the start in the springtime. So let's go get started. So our final harvest today includes 2 beautiful purple eggplants, a whole bunch of green, and some red peppers, which is good. We'll chop those up and freeze them and use them in chili over the winter time. A few pieces of okra that I had completely forgotten about, and 1 last Brussels sprout with some stinted small sprouts on it. They'll still be quite delicious. So it always pays to do that last harvest because you never know what colorful bounty you're going to get. So here we are about halfway through. I left in the kale right now, thinking maybe I'll do something with that, kale chips. I've got a few pumpkins, those tiny Chinese miniature gourds in the back. We'll get those for decoration at the end of this month. Half the ground cherries are ripped out, all the beans, all the tomatoes, everything else is gone. So what I need to do now, well first, take a look at this. These tiny plants just grew huge. I mean, look at the branching that happens at the stem, and it's as thick as my thumb. Just flabbergasting. So we'll pull these out, pull the radishes out. I will pull out some of the weeds in the raspberries, get rid of the trellis for the cucumbers, clean out the weeds here, and then we can start spading. With the greenery and weeds removed from the garden, now's the time for me to take the mulch that I had as paths and rake it across the garden, and then I'm going to till with my spade and add that material to the ground. This is what's known as turning the soil. It's an often overlooked step, especially for people that have clay soil like I do. It's practically a necessity. It's something that my grandfather taught me a long time ago, and every single year he still asks, have you turned your garden? Turning the garden, especially with hard soil, and leaving it in big clumps like this, allows the snow and rain and other elements over the next 6 or 7 months to slowly break this down into a fine particulate soil in the springtime. This allows me to have an earlier planting date. It can bump it up by almost 2 weeks if the weather is right. Because in the springtime, you don't want to till your garden if it's too wet because you'll have clumps. And clumps won't allow plants to properly root, at least in my experience. This way, I'm ensuring particulate soil that is well mixed, well oxygenated, well watered, and everything else for the springtime. And just like that, the garden is gone. I'd like to thank you so much for joining me on my 2016 gardening adventure. If you'd like to see more of the garden, I did a tour every 3 weeks over at my main channel, Midwest Man Mountain Home and Garden DIY. So those are my main tips for taking out a garden and preparing your soil for the next season. What do you do at home? Do you have sandy soil, a sandy mold, clay? Do you do pots? I'm really eager to learn what you do to prep for next year. Please subscribe to Home and Garden for Mere Mortals, check out the other contributors, and until next time, bye! Well, it's the end of the gardening season here in Wisconsin, but there's still some work to be done. Today I'm going to show you a few easy tips for saving some of your favorite seeds in the garden for next year.